Welcome back to the AR-15 barrel series, where we're taking a look at the performance of various AR-15 barrels and uppers. Today we have something particularly special to look at. It's a legit HK416 upper from 2006 that was generously loaned to the channel from Roy at Weapon Outfitters, so a big thank you to him. In this video, I'll be briefly going over the specs. Then I'll inspect the upper to get a feel for its current condition. After that, I'll head to the range to see what this nearly 20-year-old upper can do by laying down some 30-shot groups. But first, let me introduce today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is Jack Wolf Knives. Jack Wolf Knives is based right here in Phoenix, Arizona. They offer a variety of high-quality, everyday carry pocket knives. They're best known for taking timeless knife designs and producing them with modern materials and methods. Whether out in the field or at a nice dinner, Jack Wolf has an option for you. So, if you're looking for an heirloom quality knife to add to your collection, check out Jack Wolf Knives on the web or Instagram. Available for purchase at their authorized dealers worldwide. And don't forget to visit his booth at the 2025 Blade Show in Atlanta, Georgia, June 6th through 8th. Okay, so the upper, BCG, and barrel all have an AG date code, which means that they were manufactured in 2006, making this upper nearly 20 years old. The upper was originally issued to a SWAT team, where it was in service for about 10 years. After that, it was traded in and ended up on the civilian market, which, to my knowledge, is generally how 416 uppers end up outside of law enforcement or government agencies. The upper has an estimated 20 to 25,000 rounds through it, and to my knowledge, there is no definitive way to verify that. But keep in mind that this upper is nearly 20 years old and was issued to a SWAT team for 10 years. So, it's had ample time and opportunity to accrue a significant round count. We'll take a more detailed look at the barrel here in a bit, and you can make your own determination about what you think the round count might be. Keep in mind that the HK416 barrels have a near mythical status for being incredibly durable. According to HK literature, the minimum expected barrel life is 15,000 rounds, with minimal accuracy or velocity degradation. And there are various anecdotes and reports of extreme round counts with the 416. This includes a report from John Knipe that was posted on Soldier Systems, where he documents putting 67,000 rounds through a 10.4-inch HK416 upper. Also, in a Q&A with HK Pro, HK USA attributes this increase in durability to the proprietary barrel steel. Mil-Spec 4150 chrome moly vanadium steel has a chrome content of around 1%. HK alloys have a chrome content of 3% or above. And combined with the cold hammer forging process and chrome lining, HK ends up with a pretty durable barrel. Another somewhat unique feature about the 416 barrels is that they use a tapered bore. This allows for higher muzzle velocities, which can be particularly important in shorter barrels. Anyway, let's get this upper onto the bench and see how it's doing. We'll start things off with a throat gauge, and the barrel is measuring at a 2 on this gauge, which is pretty impressive for 20 to 25,000 rounds. Next up, we will check the headspace, and I know the method I'm using here isn't the best way to do this. I didn't really want to get into fully disassembling the bolt or pulling the barrel out of the upper, so this is what I got. Anyway, the bolt and barrel pass minimum headspace, so no surprises here. And the bolt does not lock on this no-go gauge, so that's pretty impressive. And the last gauge we'll use here is a 556 NATO throat gauge, and the 416 passes this gauge as well, so no problems here. Next up, I'll use my fold-in focus model bore scope that was provided by Testlong to check out the chamber and bore. I have an affiliate code with them that can save you some money if you're interested in one, and also check out my other links in the description below. Anyway, here we are starting in the chamber. Everything looks nice and consistent. No real surprises here that I see. And moving up to the shoulder, there is a bit of a ring here. We'll take a spin around here for a second to get a closer look. And moving up to the neck, obviously we have a little bit going on here. Looks to be some carbon fouling and wear on the chrome as we take a spin around here. And here's the throat, and it looks to be pretty well formed. It looks nice and consistent, which is what I would expect from a hammer forged barrel. And again, for 20 to 25,000 rounds, it looks really good. Obviously, you can see some fire cracking, but nothing too extreme. And for a quick comparison, here's what a new Geisley cold hammer forged barrel looks like. So the HK has definitely seen a few rounds. And here's a comparison against my Criterion, which has about 15,000 rounds through it. So you can see a bit of a difference here, to say the least. But obviously, these HK416 barrels have a well-established reputation of enduring really high round counts, which is pretty cool. Anyway, moving forward down the bore, you can see the fire cracking clears up pretty quick, and the rifling down here looks to be in pretty good shape. Obviously some fouling here and there, but nothing too bad. And here's the gas port. Looks like it was chamfered, which is a nice touch that I don't get to see too often. Obviously there's a bit of wear and erosion here, but given the round count, it looks pretty good. And here we are at the crown, which also looks pretty good. There are a few small spots here and there that look like they could be a little bit smoother, but nothing too extreme. I suppose we'll see if those spots have any impact on the groups when we head to the range. We'll quickly take a look at the bolt carrier group. and the main bore size will fit a 0.532 plus gauge. I know I should be using minus gauges for this, but just got myself black here. And moving on to the bolt, both the middle and tail portion of the bolt measure at about 0.5303. Next, we'll go over the shooting setup and then head to the range. The rifle is supported with a front rest and a rear bag. An A5 buffer system is used with an A5-0 buffer and Sprinco green spring. Remember this, it'll be important later. Against my normal protocol, I left the muzzle device in place because this is an expensive and historically significant upper, so I didn't really feel like messing with it. The trigger is a Geisley Super Dynamic 3-gun trigger. The barrel was cleaned prior to this range trip. The bore was fouled with a few rounds to zero the scope before starting the first group. Scope is a D&T Optics The One 7-35x56 that was provided by D&T Optics. It features a 34mm main tube with Japanese XED glass to deliver a bright and sharp image. Reticle options are available for both mil and MOA variations, with both featuring a very refined aiming point. The optic was mounted to a Reptilia 34mm AUS mount that was provided to the channel by Dangerspace LLC. Scope ring torque was confirmed at 15 inch-pounds, and clamp torque was confirmed at 45 inch-pounds. A Garmin 0C1 Pro chronograph provided by Ballistic X was used to collect velocity data. A Mantis X10 Elite is mounted to the front of the handguard to keep track of rifle stability and detect any possible shooter-induced flyers. Groups will be measured using the Ballistic X app. Each group is 30 shots fired consecutively over about 4 minutes. This simulates a match or other practical type scenario where the barrel will get some heat into it. Between each group, I used a chamber chiller and a leaf blower for cooldown. Distance was 100 yards. Point of aim is a small circle at the bottom of the target. Point of impact is set a few inches higher to preserve the aiming point. Wind is monitored with a ribbon. Each 30-shot group took about 4 minutes to shoot and was edited down to about 15 seconds. Today I'll be shooting in 3 groups. First will be Winchester 55 grain M193. After that will be 77 grain IMI Razor Core. And the last group will be with Federal Gold Medal 77 grain Sierra MatchKings. And just for reference, here is the best 30-shot group that I've shot with an AR-15 so far. Alright, let's do it. Okay, kicking things off with M193. So right from the start, the bolt carry speed was ridiculous, and it was basically ejecting brass straight forward, but we'll get to that in a minute. The wind was fine. The Mantis and Garmin captured data for all 30 shots, and the shooting felt fine on my end. And this ends up being not a great group to start out with. Not that Winchester M193 has ever grouped really well, but this group was particularly not good. Shot 23 ends up being super low, and shot 29 ends up being pretty low as well. And the rest of the group ends up being about 4 inches tall and 4 inches wide. So yeah, a pretty ugly group to start with, but hang in there, I promise it gets better. Before we break down the group, I'll touch on the forward ejecting brass and bolt velocity issue. So, for one, HK416s are generally known for being a bit violent when it comes to recoil compared to other AR-15s, and I had an A5-0 buffer installed in my lower. And I usually bring a buffer kit to the range with me, in case I need to swap out the buffer. But of course, the time when I really needed it, I forgot it at home. But anyway, I'll take the blame for under-buffering the upper. Did it ultimately affect the groups? I don't know, but just something to keep in mind. Okay, so the Winchester M193 has an advertised velocity of 3,180 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel, and we got 2,639 feet per second out of this 10.4-inch barrel. And based on about 3 minutes of Googling, that seems about right for this barrel length, but let me know in the comments if you feel differently. Standard deviation was 24 feet per second, with an extreme spread of 96 feet per second. Shot 12 was the slowest, and shot 30 was the fastest. Rifle stability looked fine with an average score of 99.5, although we did have 2 shots that slipped below 99.0. Alright, before taking a closer look at the target, we'll go over my AZ score for the new folks. So AZ stands for A-Zone Equivalence Distance, and it gives you the maximum distance where the calculated group size would still fit into a USPSA A-Zone. The reason why I use this score is because it's easier for me to make sense of the group numbers compared to looking at just the raw mean radius numbers. Getting back to the group, the extreme spread for the 30-shot group ended up at a not-so-good 6.1 MOA, although the bulk of the group is closer to 4 MOA, if you want to pretend that those 2 low shots didn't happen. Anyway, if we break the group down into 3 10-shot groups, the average 10-shot group size is 4.4 MOA, and the 30-shot mean radius is 1.446 MOA, which gives us an AZ score of 96 yards. And if we compare that to the rest of the groups I shot using a 55 grain FMJ load, the HK416 comes in 12th place out of 13 groups. So, not a great start for the 416. But I'm starting to think that Winchester M193 just really doesn't shoot that good, since the Winchester groups are dominating the bottom half of this leaderboard. Anyway, let's get started with the next group. Moving on to the IMI 77 grain Razor Core, which should hopefully play a little bit nicer with the 1-7 twist. The bolt carrier was still operating at warp speed with this group, and it actually caused a few malfunctions, which we'll get into in a bit. The wind was fine, and the Mantis and Garmin collected data on all 30 shots again, which is nice. And also the shooting felt fine on my end. And we end up with a pretty nice looking group after all this. Shots 2 and 3 end up pretty far out to the right compared to the rest of the group. Not sure what happened there. Shot 2 felt fine, and shot 3 wasn't perfect, but it didn't feel that bad. The rest of the group looks pretty well distributed, and we end up with a 27-shot group due to the 3 malfunctions. Okay, so we had 3 malfunctions, and I'll attribute these to underbuffering and the BCG basically reaching light speed, so my fault. The group still came out looking pretty decent though. Alright, so the IMI 77 grain razor core is rated at 2,750 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel, and we got 2,327 feet per second, which gives us 926 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Standard deviation was 22 feet per second with an extreme spread of 87 feet per second. Shots 2 and 3 were the slowest of the group, and those ended up to the right of the rest of the group, so that's a little weird. Average rifle stability looks fine at 99.5. Total group size for all 30 shots is 3.1 MOA, and if we break the 30-shot group down into 3 10-shot groups, the average 10-shot group size is 2.3 MOA. The mean radius for all 30 shots is 0.753 MOA, which gives us an AZ score of 187 yards. And if we compare that to all the other groups I shot with IMI 77 grain razor core, the HK416 comes in last place out of 5 groups. But it's not trailing too far behind. The 416 is only 15 yards behind the Centurion and 32 yards behind the Triarch. So not too bad. Anyway, let's keep moving forward to the next group. Okay, last group with the 416, we have Federal Gold Medal 77 grain series MatchKings. So we'll see what we end up with here. The Mantis and Garmin got data for all 30 shots again. Wind was calm, and the shooting felt fine on my end. The worst shot on the Mantis had a stability score of 99.1, which I'm okay with. And the group ends up looking pretty good and well distributed. Nothing ends up looking horribly out of place. There are 2 shots that end up looking a little bit low, and also another 2 shots that end up a little bit to the right, but all those aren't too far out of the cluster. And overall, we end up with a pretty respectable group. Before we get to the results, I want to mention that I now have a downloadable spreadsheet available on my Patreon. It has all of the results from the video so far. So, if you want to have all the data at your fingertips, feel free to check it out. I also have a lower price tier on my Patreon for those of you who would just like to contribute towards the channel without getting download access. So, look for the link in the description if you're interested. Thanks. Alright, so the Federal has an advertised velocity of 2720 out of a 24-inch barrel, and we got 2158 from the HK416, which gives us a pretty low muzzle energy of 796 foot-pounds. Standard deviation was also a little bit high at 30 feet per second, with an extreme spread of 122 feet per second. Rifle stability looked fine with an average of 99.6 and a low score of 99.1. And shot number 20 was the slowest of the group, and that one ended up a little bit further out to the right. But we ended up with a pretty good looking group with the 30-shot group size of 2.1 MOA. And if we break that down into 10-shot groups, the average 10-shot group size is 1.9 MOA. And 30-shot mean radius came in at 0.641 MOA, which gives us an AZ score of 220 yards. And if we compare that to other groups with the Federal Gold Medal 77 grain series MatchKings, the 416 upper comes in 4th place out of 5 groups. And it's only 12 yards behind the Daniel Defense, which is holding 3rd place. Moving on to the overall results for the HK416. The Winchester M193 unsurprisingly posted the worst group with an AZ score of 98 yards. Then things got a lot better with the IMI Razor Core at 187 yards, and Federal Gold Medal was the best group of the day with an AZ score of 220 yards. But there was quite a big difference in the muzzle energy between the Federal and IMI groups, with the Federal getting less than 800 foot-pounds and the IMI getting 926 foot-pounds. The standard deviation of the IMI group was the best of the day at 22 feet per second. M193 was a little bit worse with an SD of 24, and Federal had the largest SD at 30 feet per second. Velocity was also quite low for the Federal at just over 2150 feet per second, compared to the IMI Razor Core pushing the same 77 grain series MatchKing bullet at over 2300 feet per second. Alright, so a nearly 20-year-old upper that spent about 10 years in SWAT is still putting in work and not looking too bad. Of course, keep in mind that this is just one upper, so other 416 uppers may perform a little bit differently, either better or worse. Also, I'm certainly not a perfect shooter, so all the groups could likely be improved by at least a little bit. I also did use too light of a buffer with this upper, so keep that in mind. And again, a big thank you to Roy at Weapon Outfitters for loaning me this HK416. This has certainly been a memorable experience, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Also, thanks to Jack Wolf Knives for sponsoring the video, D&T Optics for sending out their scope, Danger Space LLC for supplying the Reptilia mount, and Tessalong for supplying the bore scope. Make sure you're subscribed because I've got a lot more content on the way. And I think that'll do it for this one. I'll see you next time. Later.